through the SDG Monitor initiatives. So a bit about SDSN. So SDSN is an NGO launched under the auspices of the United Nations Secretary General. Its mission to promote integrated approaches to implement the SDGs through education, research, policy analysis, as well as global cooperation. Okay, dear ladies and gentlemen, for your information, SDG Monitor is an accessible platform to help us visualize heavy and complicated SDG data points into more understandable, layman, and practical information to help make sense of current progress in sustaining our people. Hopefully, at the end of the session, we can align each of our community outreach programs with the SDGs performance in Kedah. Together with us, we have Mr. Dinesh Prakash Chako, the research analyst at the Jeffrey Sachs Center of Sustainable Development, to brief us on how to use the SDG Monitor. Before I forgot, should you have any question, you can always post it in the chat box. So without further ado, I would like to pass the session on to the speaker, Mr. Dinesh, by all means.
I can't hear you, Danesh. You're still muted. Okay.
Is it better? Is it better now?
Yes, now,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much to the team in UUM to take actually interest in the work we do, and also clearing your time today morning to go through about the SDG dashboard or the monitor, and we will eventually will have a focus on the state of Kedah. I will go through you with the whole purpose of the dashboard, and subsequently we'll look into some examples, and subsequently we'll pivot to some of the areas that we focused on Kedah. So allow me to share my screen. Okay. So what you're seeing in front is the homepage for SDGs for Malaysian states. So this particular website essentially monitors the performance of the various sustainable development goals at the state level. Okay. Before we proceed further, the Jeffrey Sachs Center is a member of the SDSN Malaysia, and SDSN globally, especially the headquarters, produces what we call the Sustainable Development Report, which assesses the performance of the SDGs at the country level. Okay. So they have a report for every country, for every goal, and for various indicators. So since they have done at the country to country level, why not we take it to the level below the country? Because we need to know what are we performing correctly and performing in the wrong, not performing in for the various goals, and also at the indicator level. So what we aim for this website, which was launched officially in May 2022, is we want to educate all Malaysians and all the stakeholders on the SDG development in Malaysia. And we have 4 audience groups that we have in mind for this particular project: the general Malaysian public, the students, the academics, and policymakers. For today, UUM constitute what I would say the group of the academics, as one of the stakeholders for this particular project. And this project is not purely a Jeffrey Sachs Center project, but it was truly an SDSN Malaysia project. We had contributions from various members of the SDSN Malaysia throughout the country. So it is more than just Jeffrey Sachs Center project, it's an SDSN Malaysia project. Okay. Now, we need to refresh ourselves a bit about what is this SDGs is all about. And because when we write up this website, we have 4 groups of audience I mentioned before. Essentially, the SDGs is focuses a form of development that's able to meet of today without compromising the ability to meet that same needs of tomorrow. So how do we measure all of this? This is where we have goals, we have targets, and we have indicators. Okay. So we know that the United Nations official SDG indicators list, which has around 247, some says 248 indicators across the 17 goals. Goals ranging from very basic ones like zero poverty to a very advanced ones like partnerships for peace. It covers indicators, economy, social, and environmental matters. Okay, so this is for the United Nations official SDG indicators. Now, we need to acknowledge something. When the indicators was developed, not all indicators are actually measurable or, or defined in a way that is not helpful for measurement for progress.
Mr. Dinesh, are you okay?
Some of the indicators is just quantitative, not quantitative. I'll stop sharing for the moment. I will change the sharing to this particular website. I'm just going to show you SDG dashboard report. And I'll go straight to something that is very visually impacting. So we go to interactive map. And they will show a world map of all the SDG scores, of which 0 is the worst, 100 is the best. So it is color coded. And Malaysia sits, above 50 points, but we are more like in the upper middle. We can do better. So like Scandinavian countries, you can see it is already at very high value, 82, 85, Finland is 86, Estonia, all these Baltic states, they do very well. Okay. So one thing you need to understand with this is they actually do the assessment for every goal and the indicators. So let me just pick one. Let's go to goal number 1. What you're seeing is the rating. Okay, so the rating basically tells at this given point of time, did this country attain the SDG or not? If it is or not, are you going to achieve the SDGs after 2030, or you are not able to do so for a very long time, or it's the situation is very dire, of which you can see green represents SDG achieved. So goal 1, for example, Malaysia. So let's click on this. You can see that Malaysia has attained the SDGs. How did we attain the SDGs? Is based through these two indicators. If you ask me these two indicators, you have the data for it and easy to measure. There is no much of a debate on how to define this. It's very important that we have to understand this because we had faced a lot of challenges when we used the official UN SDG indicator list. Okay, so they do this whole assessment for the various goals. So right now you see goal number 1, Malaysia do well. Okay, let's look at goal number 2. You see, zero hunger. You think Malaysia have an abundance of food, which is true. However, it doesn't mean everyone has equal access to the food that we cherish. So let's say we look at this in goal number 2. These are all the indicators. You can see that Malaysia does well for the curtailing the undernourishment. We have good cereal yield, and that's it. What is holding back our country behind is, for example, stunting. So let's click on stunting. So bear with me as it's a bit of a time to load. See, you look at stunting, right? This is like in 2000, 25% of the children under 5 years in Malaysia are stunted. And This is where we hit to 18.48. And then you see this arrow thing is called trends. So this trends is basically saying, are we able to attain the SDGs by 2030? And looking at the situation of our progress, we are so slow that we are actually stagnating, or we are increasing less than 50% required. Then we may able to attain the SDG value for stunting, but in a very long time framework, where we already would have way past the concept of SDGs and some other goals would have been come into play. Okay. So this is, I just went through what is the concept score, the performance at the given 1 year, rating, giving you an idea whether you've attained the SDGs or not at this given time, and a trend, projecting the future whether we can attain the SDGs by 2030 or not. Now, imagine this, we do it at the state level for Malaysia, because right now you just see Malaysia as a country and comparing it against other countries. I will go and stop sharing this, and let's go back to the SDGs for the Malaysian states. Because I want all of you to be grounded to something that all of us can relate to. Because country to country is a bit difficult. Okay. And we have made it clear, we have a written section for the methodology to tell you how we chose the indicators, why we took a hybrid approach of assessing the official list from UN and the UN SDSN Sustainable Development Report SDG indicator list. Okay. And we also acknowledge all the various contributors. And we will come to this section towards the end of our discussion. Okay. Now, we tend to associate this whole website with one term called the dashboard. Actually, the dashboard shows you an example of how we did a state level assessment for all the goals where possible for all the states and territories. So this gives you an overview. And because UEM is based and focusing on Kedah, I'll show you what are the performance for the various states. It should load up anytime soon. So right now, for every state, for every goal, so bear with me, it's taking a bit of a time to load up. Let me just go back to Johor. Okay, I think it just changed. Okay, let's look at Kedah. We have 17 goals, and I will be upfront. There are some goals that we couldn't do assessment because of lack of data. Which were the goals that was affected? Goal number 12 and 13. Okay, so we'll remove that from this assessment. Now we look at various goals. Goal number 1, Kedah has significant challenges. The score, I think the state can do better. The trend here basically says that for Kedah to attain the desired SDG value for the goal number 1, you will attain after 2030. Okay, this is the first thing. That's for goal number 1. Now let's look at just goal number 2, and I'll just pick and choose some of the goals. Goal number 2, zero hunger. Kedah, like any other Malaysian states, major challenges. Look at the score, just above 50. But because of the insufficiency of the data, we can't project it for 2030. As a matter of fact, finding information about zero hunger in the country is very slow. Okay, so this is something that I would like all of us to explore. And you can choose any state you would like to. So you can see some the states are doing well, some of the states are not doing well. So like SDG 6, which I think is a basic stuff, clean water and sanitation. We are doing, Kedah is doing very well. It should be focusing on maintaining this SDG achievement. So this is the dashboard. Now let's proceed to going to the theme sections, the thematic sections. Now, we just now looked at the state level performance, but let's try to make sense of all these SDG assessments. So that is why we divided by themes. So let's look at no poverty. So you click on this. What I need to do is I'm going to share this tab. Every goal, separate tab. And from the goal, we go under indicators. Okay. Okay, so just bear with me. So this is a general explanation of the SDG for Malaysian states. So I give you a general explanation. And now let's really understand how it looks like using that as Sustainable Development Report methodology for goal number 1 performance. So just now you see country to country, but just now let's really see how it applies for the Malaysian states. Now you can see that that the overall goal number 1 assessment, unfortunately none of the states have attained the SDGs. Okay, so you can see that the states that have major challenges are Sabah, Sarawak, Kelantan, and surprisingly Selangor. You might think, oh, as an economically advanced states like Selangor, Penang, or advanced territories such as KL or Putrajaya, they should not have the problem of goal 1. So this is where I am going to unpack something for all of you to understand. Just because you have high income, just because you have high GDP, does not mean you have good SDG values. This SDGs is a holistic, even just within the goal. Okay, so for Kelantan, Sabah, Sarawak, you understand right away. It's because of the economically they are not very advanced. But you see Selangor, you even see like state of Penang, they are not doing very well. And you can click on this state. Let's pick Kedah for example. So these maps are interactive, so it should work. So I give you a population estimate at Kedah. This is the GDP, and this is what is the situation. This score rating and trends is primarily targeted for policymakers and academics. So you understand that you should focus on goal number 1. Then I'll explain to you what are the targets, and this is where I need to be very upfront about it. Because this whole exercise is about assessing SDGs, you need the data. We have to make a judgment call which indicators are useful for the state level. I repeat again, which indicators are useful for the state level. See, a lot of the indicators for goal number 1, as a matter of fact, nearly half of them, or even half of the indicators, were deemed not relevant for states. Okay, for example, if they talk about indicators that are meant to be measured at the national level, then of course it's not meant for the states. It's not relevant. There are some indicators, and I will be upfront about this, where it is actually a duplicate indicators can be found in goal number 6, goal number 7, goal number 13. I'll give you one example, especially in goal number 1. They talk about proportion of population accessing to basic services. Okay, so you can see that proportion to access to basic services includes what? Access to water, access to electricity, access to garbage collection. As a matter of fact, I found out there's 9 sub-indicators for that particular indicator. And what we found out is that these indicators were actually being measured in goal number 6, goal number 7, goal number 13, and many more, even goal number 9. So that raises a question, is this indicator even relevant for goal number 1? When it is being duplicated for other goals, then we will have to put that aside. It's not appropriate for here. Then we have the setter indicators where it is relevant for the states, but the data is not available. To give you an example, proportion of the population that have access to basic welfare services. It is relevant because the state governments do this work, the federal government does this work. It is relevant. However, the data that was presented by Department of Statistics Malaysia, they did not give us the proportion. They just gave us the number. The indicator is very clear. I need percentages, not raw numbers. See, that's the situation we face. And this is the most ideal situation. Indicators that's relevant for the states and the data is available. For Sustainable Development Report or SDG indicators, we have identified there are 3 indicators or so that is relevant for the states, but of which only 2 we can find data. Sorry, yeah. I apologize, there's something popping up on my computer. Okay, so you can see that the indicators from what we know, what we have collected data. Let's look at the indicators that we have decided to do a focus study. Okay, so we have looked into these 3. So I will go through with all of you, bear with me, all the stuff within this just goal number 1, because within goal number 1 you already can see a spectrum of progress. Just imagine, just within goal number 1. So let's start with indicator 1.1.1. This is about poverty prevalence under international poverty line. Okay, I'm going to switch the tab. So we have gone from a general overview assessment, and then the second level assessment we look at the goals. The third, we look at the indicator. And this is an indicator assessment written by Dr. Azhar of UUM, Azharuddin from UUM. So we asked him, okay, we provided him the data, the assessment, to make sense for the general public and also potential students of the Sustainable Development Goals. Have actually maintained this achievement. Okay, I'll show you what was done. So bear with me. Okay. Unfortunately, the Chrome, my Chrome has froze a bit. Okay. You can see the performance at the goal level. We also do this at the in this once that you see
Mr. Dennis, we cannot hear you.
this. Okay, can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe just rewind a little bit, Danish. I think
Okay.
the internet on that side is not stable.
Okay. So now you see all the states in Malaysia for extreme poverty attained the SDG for this 1.1.1. Let's look at Kedah. So irrespective of economic development, all Malaysian states attain the SDGs. Okay, if you are not sure, if you can't trust this, you can click on this pop-up. We give you the population estimate, the GDP. You see the proportion of household under international poverty line, 0%. Okay, and then we'll give you the indicator score ratings and trends. Okay. Now, while this the Chrome just hung a bit, um, this assessment talks not only about the definitions, not only talk about what's the current situation, we give an explanation what we have achieved, how did we achieve, what are the challenges that could that b- uh, that could affect the performance indicator, and what does it take for us to maintain this goal. Okay, and then let me just scroll down. This part, recommendations based on Dr. Asharuddin's expertise. He suggested that for us to maintain this achievement, we must do these three things. So this is directed for policymakers. Then we have uh, for the references, we is directed for our academics. Okay. So this is something that this is how it is actually designed for all the indicators that we have assessed. Okay. Now I am going back to the SDG 1, share this tab. Okay. And we will go to another indicator where there is variety of performance. Okay. Let's click on 1.2.1. Let me just share this tab. Okay. Now, what is population under poverty line? That's using different measurements. We have absolute poverty, we have relative poverty. There's many types of poverty line. Okay. And for this, we decided to take an approach of assessing the absolute poverty performance and relative poverty performance. And this is something you will see very interesting things. So for example, you look at absolute poverty, which is at the top. The states that are having difficulties is like Kelantan and Sabah. I think as a general public, you will understand this is quite straightforward, right? So I'm just waiting for the pop-up to appear for the Kelantan. Then you can see for Penang, Selangor, KL, Putrajaya, their income is very high. And we can see that their SDG achievement is SDG achieved at this point. So let's look at Kelantan. We can see the poverty prevalence is quite bad. It's around 12%. Sabah is even worse, if I'm not mistaken. For specific indicators, we actually give you multi-year data. So last time Kelantan is very bad, 20%. Now it's dropped to 12%. So this matches about the trend. That means Kelantan has major challenges in SDGs for absolute poverty, but by 2030 they will attain SDGs. Now we look, so we can see that. So you can see that when we go look at the relative poverty performance, you can see that the flip has taken place. States like Kelantan, they don't have an issue with relative poverty. States like Selangor has major challenges, and the worst news is their performance is going backwards. You might say, I thought the GDP is very high. Shouldn't this be an issue? No. You can see the data. There's a regression. That means Selangor not only will not able to achieve the SDG for by 2030, it just goes backwards. And this is concerning. Okay. And then we have the write-up specifically for absolute poverty, relative poverty, and the recommendations. This is being replicated across the various goals for various indicators. Okay. Now, I would like to go back to my homepage. So I know we have been jumping for a few tabs here and there. It's a bit confusing, but just stick with me on this matter. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down. And this time, we are going to focus more on the needs that I think for UUM is concerned about. The SDG assessment, specifically for the state of Kedah. Okay, so we scroll down. And we have a very special section, the major SDG challenges by states. So you can see the major SDG challenges by states. Sorry, not Kelantan, we will choose Kedah. For every state, we will tell you which indicator are the challenges. So let's go through this for Kedah. The first two relates to zero hunger, stunting and wasting. As a matter of fact, this is a it's a problem throughout the country. Traffic death rates, goal number 3. Mathematics proficiency, goal number 4. Gender gap for mobile phone ownership, goal number 5. Proportion of female representation, that's goal number 5. Average share of the built up area, that's goal number 11. Now you look at the environment. Point number 8, that indicator refers to goal number 14, right? Point number 9 and 10, specifically focusing on goal number 15. Then government revenues, if I'm not mistaken, is goal number 16. We do this for every state and federal territories and regions, okay? So this is, you can explore all of this. So with this, it helps you, especially my fellow members at UM. These are the areas that you may want to ask your students, your fellow researchers, or other academics to really study. These are the indicators that is holding back the goal performance for Kedah. Now, this is just all words. So let me show you something that we have recently added and we are potentially looking to to expand further. So after this website was launched, we have created 2 new tabs. One was specifically on the impact of COVID-19 on SDG ratings. And one very specific is about the assessment of the SDGs one level below the state. So let's explore the COVID-19 first. I will be wrapping up this session soon. And I will tell you upfront, because this platform we're using is the RGIS Online. It's a fantastic tool. Was responsible for giving us a hub, this template form to put all the contents. But at the same time, it does have a bit of a downside because the loading of the interactive maps can be quite slow. So this is something I would like you to be aware. It's when you open this website and explore, and suddenly you find the loading is quite slow. It's not necessarily because of the internet has an issue. Your internet has an issue. It has to do with the Esri platform. Okay. So while this is loading, this impact assessment of COVID-19 focuses on selected indicators, whereby you will see the assessment of all the Malaysian states via an interactive map for 2019, a year before COVID, and in 2020, the first year of COVID. Okay. My apologies for the background noise. Okay. So let me just stop sharing for this moment. This is a bit loading. My apologies there, my Chrome just frozen. Let me just respond via my mobile because apparently my Chrome just froze.
Danish, you're muted, Danish.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
My apologies, just now my Chrome just froze, it impacted even the WebEx too. Okay. Now the Chrome is back to normal. I'll show you the before and after on the COVID-19 assessment on the very few indicators. So let's look at one of the very essential indicators, absolute poverty. Okay, so what you see here, let me just show you, is the absolute poverty situation on the left hand side. What do you see here? Let me just remove this. This is the situation of the SDG assessed achievement or not achievement for 2019, 1 year before COVID. So what do you see? States Sabah, Kelantan, major challenges. What are the states that are green color? Penang, Selangor, KL, Putrajaya. And then the rest is in between. Now, this is 1 year before COVID. What happens when COVID struck? Within 1 year, we have new states that were brought into the major challenges. What are the states? Sarawak, Terengganu, Kedah, and Perak. State like Penang lost the SDG achievement and went to challenges remain. Selangor resisted it, right? Those states who used to be in challenges remain fell into the significant challenges, right? If SDG achieved is the best, major challenges is the worst, then challenges remain is being second to the best, and significant challenges remain is second to the worst. Okay, this is what has happened. This is just for indicator 1.2.1. I'll show you another example for relative poverty. Okay, before, after. What has happened? Kelantan's SDG achievement, Terengganu's SDG achievement was erased by COVID. Okay, now let's look at goal number 3. This is very interesting. Life expectancy. Because COVID has created a lot of deaths throughout the world, and including Malaysia is not spared. Has it even impacted our life expectancy? Okay, I'll show you what has happened. Generally speaking, Malaysia needs to do a lot to improve the life expectancy, right? I find Sarawak a bit anomalous because economically it's not as advanced as Selangor and Penang, but life expectancy is quite good compared to other states of its economic level. This is before COVID. What happens when COVID struck? Surprisingly, it did not make any states go on the reverse direction. As a matter of fact, life expectancy in Malacca has slightly improved. So this is something of a peculiar situation. Can I show you one more last example? This is one of the most obvious one. Road traffic deaths. Okay, we know in Malaysia this is a real problem. Nearly not, for some odd reason, Sabah is spared from this. Okay, this is 1 year before COVID. What happens once COVID struck? The yellow becomes orange, the red becomes orange, orange becomes yellow. You notice that COVID, because of all the MCOs, the lockdowns and everything, disrupted a lot of the physical travel to the point that it reduced the road traffic deaths. And you can explore this for various goals. Various indicators or selected goals. Now, I will show you one last example, one last step that is of great relevance for the work you do. Have it. My apologies. So just now we said primary challenge, data availability. Second challenge is the indicator of relevance. Okay. For this, we only strictly do indicator level assessment. We do not do goal assessment. Why? Because the data availability for the indicators is quite bad. Okay. Now this is a specific page that assesses these for the various indicators for the Kedah districts, and there's one separate table for the Dun level. Because in Kedah, we have the administrative and the local councils. That's one tier of governance. I mean, that's one of some of the tiers of governance. And then you have the electoral governance, that is the parliamentary and the Dun level. And in Kedah, the Dun constituencies are smaller than districts. So you can even go one level below the district for some of the indicators. Okay, let me just go through with all of you briefly about what we did for the Kedah. Let me just zoom this out. So this is the absolute poverty assessment. You can see, we know that Kedah has significant challenges. The only district that attained the SDGs is Langkawi. Kubang Pasu is challenges remain. And you can click on this and you can find information. We give you the urban, rural, income, absolute poverty incidence. Okay. But when it comes to action plan, you should focus on districts like Yan, Kuala Muda, and you will be surprised, hey, why Kuala Muda? Isn't it that's Sungai Petani is economic hub full of industries? Why is there absolute poverty? And Baling. Okay. Then when you look at relative poverty, you see the flip. Generally speaking, Kedah is doing okay in terms of the relative poverty. But the areas of concerns would be Yan and Baling. So when it comes to action plan for poverty, you probably will focus a lot of your energies in Yan and Baling because you want to tackle two forms of poverty. Okay. So this one we have on the gender gap. Let me just scroll down all the way to the bottom. And we have the Dun level assessment. Okay. For this one, we just show strictly as a table, tabular data, but it is semi-interactive. Okay. And this is just, I will be upfront, is an assessment before COVID because the Dun level SDG indicator data was only made available recently. So every Dun for selected 6 indicators, five indicators, you can see what is achieved and what are the challenges for every Dun, and you can play around with this income level. Okay. I will stop talking and I also will stop the sharing because I would like to open the time for question and answer.
Okay, thank you very much to the speaker for that, I could say, very insightful sharing. Okay, so to the participants, should you have any question, you can always post your questions in the chat box. So at FETMA, we work closely with SDSN Malaysia, and we are so lucky to have sustainability office in University Utara Malaysia. So it is hoped that all our community outreach programs support the major SDG challenges and soon continuously improve the SDG indicators rating in Kedah. Okay. So if you need any separate briefing, you can always email Ms. Puyik or Mr. Danesh, okay, through their emails, Puyik, P-H-U-I-Y-I-K, at sunway.edu.my, as well as Danesh C, okay, D-A-N-E-S-H-C at sunway.edu.my. Okay. So let us take a look at our chat box. Okay, I'm Darwinda from Southeast. Thank you for your sharing, Mr. Danesh. Okay, so she has a question for us. What are the areas of concern for Kuala Nerang? Thank you very much. Kuala Nerang. Mr. Danesh, I think you forgot to unmute.
Okay, so let me just go and answer this question right away.
Thank you.
The Dun Kuala Nerang, which is in the district of Padang Terap, okay, and we will look from a perspective from the Dun and also from the parent district. We look from electoral and administrative. The challenges we have identified is absolute poverty and inequality. Okay, so this is what we did. Okay, now let me, for the interest of everyone, go through some of the challenges that the district of Padantara, which is this, I hope you can see my arrow. You can see they had challenges in the absolute poverty, not a concern for relative poverty. Water is okay, internet is okay, inequality is an issue, deforestation, you see the red in color here, that is a concern. Okay, so that is going beyond Kuala Nerang, but since Kuala Nerang is part of Padantara, this is what we have found.
So I believe that, okay, all the person in charge, or I could say all the experts who are doing any sustainability efforts in Kedah, you can actually troubleshoot lots of problems, okay, in Kedah. All right. Do you have any more questions from the participants?
Do we have any questions about, like, does anyone of you have concerns about methodology or anything that would like to ask how you would like to leverage this website for the purposes of sending your students for future SDG related activities?
So maybe Mr. Danesh, maybe you can share with us how do you actually measure all of these SDG challenges? How do you measure them?
Okay, I hope I'm unmuted myself this time.
What will be
And
the what we call the instrument that you used?
the instrument. Okay, let me share my screen.
Okay.
Just bear with me. It's just the Chrome takes a bit of a time. Okay, there's this section called methodology. Okay, so I'll explain this bit while I hope there are more questions come on the way when this session happens. Okay, so now you can see that this is a page focusing on the methodology. Okay, first thing first, we must understand what are we trying to measure? We are measuring the assessment at the state and federal level. This actually is a very important factor in determining which indicators are relevant and not relevant. Okay, we will go through all of this, and this is where we will be upfront about something. Some of these indicators, okay, the official indicators, they have clear methodology and you can find the data. Okay, the other indicators, they say they have clear methodology and concept, but the data is not generally produced. So these are the challenges when you solely measure the United Nations official SDG indicator list. Okay, now how did we choose the indicators for this assessment? Okay, you may have different opinions, you may have different approaches altogether. We use three approaches. Expert consultation, we ask experts. For example, if I approach an expert for goal number 1, out of the 14 or so indicators, which is relevant, which is not relevant, and they have to explain to us why this indicator is not relevant, why is this indicator is relevant. Okay, second, it must be relevant for Malaysian states. If especially like goal number 17, they talk about a lot of things about country to country assessment. Like, do you collect census? I mean, do you do census? Do you receive official development assistance? This is a national level assessment, not at the state level. So if you see those indicators, we will put that aside. It is not relevant for Malaysian states. Third, and this for particularly for trend calculation. If the indicator is relevant, if there is data, my question is, does the data have a 3-year time interval? Because for us, when we do trend calculation, we need at least 3-year time interval from 2015. That's when the SDGs are. To sum all this up, this is how we do it. This chart shows how we choose the indicators. So you have the United Nations official SDG indicator list and the Sustainable Development Report SDG indicator list. And we have to see if there is an overlap or not. If there's an overlap, then we remove the overlap. We choose one. Okay, if it is not, we'll bring this together. We took this hybrid approach for a very good reason. We are not in the position to tell the SDG indicator list produced by United Nations is not helpful. Nor we say that Sustainable Development Report SDG indicator list is covers everything. So we decided to take a hybrid approach where we take both of them together. So to ensure as much as possible that this is a holistic assessment. This is how we choose indicators. Now, once we choose the indicators and once we get the data, this is where the next challenge comes into play, the methodology. And this is where I would like to address the question about that is raised by the host. Okay. We have 3 types of measurements: score, ratings, and trends. Where did we get this methodology from? We got this methodology from the SDSN methodology that underpins the SDR report. Because at the end of the day, we are not here just collecting the data. We want to know whether this state is able to attain their 23. And what's the current look? If you ask me among the 3 measurements I talk about, score, ratings, and trends, this is the easiest for you to understand. Basically, it measures the performance, the best or the worst for every indicator for every region. Okay, so all the scores will be reduced to 0 to 100, and this is where a very important challenge I'm going to put out to everyone here. What is the desired value that we should attain for elimination of extreme poverty? Globally, it says 0%, I think. So we'll stick with 0%. What happens if you have more challenging ones like absolute poverty or relative poverty? So this is where we can have different forms of thresholds. Sometimes we use absolute thresholds, we use United Nations target values, the principles of leave no behind. It doesn't work. It ensures that you can do a direct comparison of the SDG indicator assessment of indicator 1.1.1 of extreme poverty with another indicator, for example, stunting or wasting. Because I'll tell you upfront, the indicators by itself is not comparable to each other. The score allows the direct comparison. So you can say that this district, it eliminated extreme poverty. By the same time, it has not eliminated wasting. One of the basic economic problems. Why can't we even eliminate the other basic problem, wasting? This is the score. Okay, and this is the formula, and I will not read this aloud. This is how it works, right? So this is where you need to have a lower bound and upper bound. Okay, upper bound, lower bound. The upper bound is, for example, extreme poverty must be 0%. Lower bound, this is a value that we should not even think about crossing. We should not have an extreme poverty more than 20%. Now, this is at the indicator score level. Next, rating. The most visually impacting assessment measure among the three. Basically, it gives you what we call a traffic light scheme. Got green, SDG achieved, yellow challenges remain, orange significant challenges remain, and red major challenges remain. And if you notice, the language is quite constructive. Huh? Red means it's very bad, but there's a different way to say it. It means we have a lot of challenges. Okay, so this is where we have additional thresholds. We talked about upper bound, lower bound. Okay, let's be very clear. Not all states in Malaysia will attain 0% extreme poverty, but are we going to penalize a state just having an extreme poverty of 0.1%? No, that's not fair, right? So this is where we put in between thresholds. So for example, ideally you should attain 0%, but if you're between the bandwidth between 0 and 1%, your state is within the SDG achieved band. Okay? Then you have situations where some states might have 10% extreme poverty. This hypothetical situation. So it's not 20% the worst case scenario, the lower bound, but it's gone beyond the bandwidth of SDG achieved. So this is where you have the other threshold called the red threshold. This is where if a value, let's say, is 15% or more until you hit 20%, you are under major challenges. And this is where you have a formula that's to calculate the challenges remain and significant challenges. Okay. So this is where we try to, it's using the score, it's kind of using the score values, and we'll figure out whether the state falls under the green, the yellow, the orange, and the red. Now let's go look at the trend. The trend requires a 3-year time year interval data, 2016 to 2019, 2015 to 2018, 2015 to 2019, 2016 to 2022, right, for example. And then they will do a linear projection in 2030. So if the desired value is 0%, today the state is 10%, but if you look at the 3-year time interval data, you can project in 2030 and see, are we on track? Are we moderately improving? That means progressing quite well, but unfortunately, I'll tell you upfront, cannot attain the value by 2030 after evaluating. Stagnating is like the progress is just too slow and not moving much, and then the worst case scenario is decreasing. Okay, these are the general idea that's used for calculating scores, ratings, and trend. And we do this for the indicator level and the goal level, because our goal is a composite of indicators. So the goal score is basically you take the average of all the scores. Very simple. Where things differ is the goal rating. The goal rating does not take the average of all the red, yellow, and green. It takes the average of the 2 worst performing indicator ratings. Why? It's basically we want to tell everyone for this state there are challenges, and the reason why there are challenges is there are 2 indicator ratings that's dragging the state down. So for example, like goal number 2 for Kedah, its major challenges, right? What do you think is contributing to it? Wasting and stunting. So that means your effort should be directed to it, right? And then you have the trend, which is the average trend arrows of all the indicators. Okay, this is how we do the assessment and the indicator level and at the goal level.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Danesh. And then we
I
would
I
like
think
to
I would like
invite
to, because I think
Miss.
Pui mentioned something.
Yeah,
Let
Miss
the
Louis
host.
mentioned in the chat box. I would like to address Dr. Rawinda's question to show how to navigate the dashboard to obtain a direct for community engagement. Yes, by all means. Thank you.
Yes,
Miss Louis.
yeah, good morning, everybody. Dr.
Morning.
Darwinda. So we see here Kuala Nerang di bawah sini. And for Dun level, kami ada beberapa sahaja sebab of because of the data availability. So of these 5, you can just zoom into the challenges remain, and it's treat this as a positive thing, that when we know how to assess our situation, then we know what action to take. Because sometimes, I say this because sometimes looking at the SDG achievement, we may feel very demotivated, but treat this as an opportunity to improve our community. So from here, we see absolute poverty. That means we draw a particular line, a national poverty line, 2,208 ringgit, and all the households that are underneath that line will be counted. So we see a lot of households are underneath that national poverty line. And I'm sorry, I made a mistake, not the national poverty line, because this is for Kedah, so it would be the state poverty line. So we see it is relevant to the state. So we have adjusted it to the state level. So based on this, and Gini rating is a measurement of income inequality. So if everybody in the state earn exactly the same amount, then it would be SDG achieved, but right now challenges remain. So first we start here. We know that there's an issue with income. Maybe there's an issue with access to economic opportunities. So we look further, and that's where Danish showed above. So let's just go backwards. So we look at the district level assessment, because Kuala Nerang is in Padang Terap. We can see what interventions to take. We see that deforestation is an issue here. So even though it has nothing to do, not necessarily a direct correlation with income level, but we know that the worse our environment is, the less forest we have, the harder it is for humans to have a high level of well-being, because of a greater prevalence of air pollution, and also less ecosystem services, greater prevalence of floods, because there are less trees. So we may want to say that, oh, for our students, we should ask them to, if they're talking to the community, to develop a few infographics and lessons on the importance of ecosystem services. And the idea is that the community will then, when they speak to their local government, they will say that the environment is important, and that if they see any clearing happening around their area, in, let's say, degraded forests or more primary forests, then they can voice out. They are more confident to voice out. So that's one intervention to look at environment awareness. And when we look up above, this is the Gini assessment. So Padang Terap is doing better than, say, Kubang Pasu, but at the same time, it is still in the yellow. So we know that income is not equal. Okay, so we just take that information and keep on scrolling up. Now we come to access to internet. Everything seems quite well. So we know that people are able to access information. And now we come to water. We also know that Padang Terap is quite water secure. We keep on moving. And here's something interesting. Unlike the absolute poverty indicator earlier, this is a poverty based on the heads of households of male households and female households. So here we see there's a gender gap. Now, although Padang Terap is doing better than much of Kedah, meaning the heads of the female households, there's a less of a gap between the heads of the male households, but it's still challenges remain. And from here, we can try and ask what would benefit the female households to come up in terms of income level. So we may be able to develop certain programs with regards to women entrepreneurship. We may be able to support small businesses, to bring in students, to identify women entrepreneurs and to support their business either by helping them to market their products or bringing in skills for them to have more products and more income. So we can find ways to develop a curriculum that is very tangible based on what is happening on the ground. And of course, when you get on the ground, you may have a different understanding, and we would like to hear, Danesh and I would like to hear about what is the reality and how this dashboard can be used, because we want to improve it further. Just for UUM, because out of all the Malaysian states, we have only done this sub-state level assessment for Kedah. So let's move up. Relative poverty, Padang Terap is doing fine. And of course, here is the absolute poverty. So in conclusion, there are 3 interventions that you, Dr. Darwinda, you can propose for a school that you're going into or a community. You can look at entrepreneurial support for women, skills, bringing their products to market, and small business support. The second thing is environmental awareness. So to tell them about the benefits of the ecosystem services in order to inform the community of the need to remind their local government to keep the forest intact. And lastly, we can also, because there's some uneven income distribution, we can also see how the income is being distributed. Are there areas that are underserved? And to ask the students to report this to the local government, just as a way for information to flow, because sometimes the welfare officers may not be enough welfare officers, and they may not be able to cover the district very sufficiently. So it will help to let them know what observations the students have made on the ground. So I hope, Dr. Darwinda, that has helped you to come up with a plan of action to really allow your students to do impactful work year upon year. Back to you, Dr. Sadi.
Thank you very much, Miss Puyi. So Major Norzila said that, okay, I would like to have the recording link. Okay, yes, we will share. And then I have some questions. How frequent actually do they update the indicators? And how can the university help to improve the SDG indicator rating? From time to time, should we submit our data, which means the captured data from successful community outreach programs to SDSN? So how can we help? Maybe you can discuss a bit about that. Thank you.
Danesh can take the data availability part.
Okay, I'll start first because that was the first part of the question. Okay. The Malaysian Department of Statistics, the Department of Statistics Malaysia produces the SDG reports every year. That does not mean that the data is being updated for all the indicators of the same year. What do I mean by that? If the report says SDG indicator report of 2019, does not mean all the indicator data is 2018. It will be a mixture. But recently they have released the SDG indicator for 2021. So quite a number of indicators, they have already gone to 2020 and some are 2021. So the frequency, I will be upfront, it's inconsistent. Hopefully in maybe 1 or 2 years, this will be more current. For your next one.
Yes, for the next part, I think it would be helpful to keep on feeding Danesh and myself. And actually, we have another colleague here, Jeremy, who is on board to run the dashboard as well. So he is also a very key resource. So please let us know what data you have so that we can incorporate it in a way that's valuable to you. Because at the end, if the data is valuable to you, then it is a success. But if it's not that useful, then this dashboard is like flying in the internet, just something that is nice to look at, but may not have community or wider impact. So please, please do keep in touch on the data part. Because for example, after knowing that UUM sustainability report has included this dashboard, Danish is working on putting that as an example, a use case on the dashboard itself. So until we know how you use it, we can't put it on the dashboard. But if we know how you're using it and the challenges that you have, then we are able to show how to use the dashboard, to use your case on the dashboard as a means to communicate to others how they may use the dashboard. So please do, by all means, submit your data to us. But what data it is, I think we'll work with whatever you have first, and then we can refine it from there.
Thank you, Ms. Hui. And Mr. Danesh, it's very good to know that we can actually help and submit our data to SDSN to improve the ratings. Mr. Dawinda mentioned over here, thank you, Ms. Hui. We are actually focusing on the women entrepreneurship at the moment. So entrepreneurship to improve poverty, reduce inequality, whatnot. All right. So we still have around 5 minutes together. Okay, maybe I would like to have last words from our two speakers. So maybe we can start with Mr. Dinesh first. Your last words to the participants. Hmm?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether Danish heard you, Dr. Sadi.
Sorry, there was some issues with my headset. Sorry, can you? May I ask what was the question or comment?
Maybe Mr. Danesh, I would like to give last words to our participants for today.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you very much for clearing your Thursday morning for this session. And I would like all of you to explore this particular dashboard and specifically choose the Kedah one and start leveraging it for all your future SDG activities. I will be very happy to hear how this dashboard facilitate all your SDG activities. Thank you.
And the same from myself as well, everyone in Kedah. No, we are so far away in a sense. It's unfortunate. If not, we would be right there with you. But we see the efforts of UUM in making an impact through their academics into their students, into the community. And we are very, very impressed by the structure that you have set up with all the 16 schools through this MEKAR program. So we hope to share as much resources as possible and for you to really tell us how you have conducted your own community impact, because sometimes the global resources, they're not very useful for Malaysian audiences. So we want to allow Malaysian audiences, the Malaysian cases, to be elevated to the state, the national, and the global level. So please use this platform because UUM is one of the most active SDSN Malaysia members, and we're very proud of you for being that. And we are your cheerleaders to showcase you on more wider platforms. So please do be in touch, everybody. And thank you so much to Dr. Sadi and Dr. Masnita for coordinating this and for having this vision. Back to you, Dr. Sadi.
Thank you very much to both of the speakers. So maybe what I can say is that our participants, maybe they would like to know more about sustainability itself. So do you mind to share with us that particular link whereby they can watch the videos regarding sustainability, which has been developed by SDSN? Can you share with us that
Yes,
particular link, that
we
video?
share with you. It's like a YouTube for sustainability videos created by our flagship program under SDSN. Yeah, almost all of it is in English, but we have one course that actually both Dr. Sadi and Dr. Masnita, they were translators for the course, and many of you here, I think I see Dr. Hapini Awang as well. So let me find that link and share it with you.
And so moving forward, we will call upon, we will invite, okay, all of the participants. Maybe some of you are interested to join in the translation, what we call translation, module, translation of modules, right? For school students, isn't it? For school students. So from English to Malay. The detail will tell you later. So we will blast to the community of UUM. So thank you so much to everybody. And okay, so we could see that in the chat box, yes, Miss Pui already shared with us that SDG Academy Library. So all of you are welcome, okay, to watch these videos regarding sustainability. And yes, subtitles available in Malay for this course. Yes, you can take a look at that particular link as well. And before we end this session, is it possible for us to capture our pictures together? So I would like to. Tiga orang eh? Oh, only 3 of us. Okay.
Only 3 of us.
Okay. So before we end our session, let us capture our picture. Okay, just the 3 of us, isn't it? Okay. Correct. 1, 2, 3. Screen. Okay. Okay, thank you very much to all the participants, to the speakers especially, and hopefully we can have another one more session, maybe in the future. Okay, face to face, we can meet each other. And thank you so much, everybody, and have a nice day. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.